to bring the 49ers to the forefront.
It's go time. This is the best team that they can put on the field this year.
Welcome to Niners Nightly.
You guys are going to hear it. The latest from the locker room, the latest from the podium, the latest scuttle from the players.
On your proud home of 49ers football. KNBR, the sports leader. Your faithful fix with your host, Larry Krueger, begins.
We'll take phone calls. We'll talk Niners for a full hour. Fired up. Really excited.
Now.
And away we go. Welcome to Niners Nightly after Monday Night Football. The Monday Night Football doubleheader. What an exciting doubleheader that was. It's in the books. We're going to take your calls right now. 808 KNBR, the phone number. How do you feel, Niner fans, after the Niners lose in Tampa to the Buccaneers yesterday in Week 6, and maybe more importantly, lose Fred Warner for the year? That was a killer. But 808 KNBR is the number if you want to talk about it. We'd love to talk about it with you. 808 KNBR, the phone number. And really the question of the night on the Niner front, where do they go from here? Where do you want to see the 49ers go from here as the November 4th trade deadline approaches? What do you want to see them do? Trade for a veteran? If so, which position? Trade for a young player? If so, who do you want? Trade away some of your veteran players and acquire more draft capital, or do nothing, stand pat and just play this thing out. What do you want to see John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan do? I've heard everything today. I've heard, they're still Super Bowl contenders, and I've heard their season's done. Put a fork in the Niners, they're cooked. So what is it? Which is it? 808 KNBR. Their two best defensive players done for the year. Bye-bye Bosa, bye-bye Fred. But they're 4-2. But their offensive line's getting beat consistently. But they have two quarterbacks they can win with. But they can't run the ball. But they have the best running back going in Christian McCaffrey. Do you see how they're conflicted? So they have no offensive balance. They're forced to throw the ball 40 times a game. Now both their quarterbacks are hurt. Mac Jones has been hit 20 times in the last two games. So 808 KNBR, where are you with the Niners? Where are you with what you want to see them do? I mean, we all want to see them persevere and get off the deck and make something of this year, but how is the best way to go about it? If you ran the Niners, how would you play your hand of cards? If you were John Lynch, would you trade draft capital for veterans? Or would you trade veterans away and try to get more draft capital? I mean, there's lots of different ways that they can play their hand of cards. How do you want to see them approach the rest of this year? Now that there's no Bosa, there's no Warner, and yet they're 4-2, and they're one of the best teams in the league. So how do you want to see them go about it? So we can get into some of your calls. 808 KNBR is the phone number. Matt Mayoko stopped by with Dirty Work. We'll replay some of that conversation right at the end of the show just to let you hear it. It was really good stuff. Couple quick thoughts, though, on this Monday night doubleheader. First of all, in the NFL, whoever wins the turnover battle is basically going to win. There's only about 8 to 10 possessions per game. If you win the turnover battle, you're going to win. If you don't win the turnover battle, you're not going to win. Tonight in Atlanta, it's Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills on the road, and yet, they fell into a 21-7 hole at halftime. And they couldn't climb out of it. 24-14 was the final. And if you go back and look at this game, the number one thing that jumps out is that Buffalo was -2 in turnovers. So you're -2 in turnovers, it's going to be hard to win. And they were -2 in turnovers, and they didn't win. Michael Penix and the Falcons won. And by the way, Michael Penix and the Falcons are next up for the Niners. So it was it was good to see what the Falcons have tonight. I mean, Penix has got a great arm. And then they got Bijan Robinson, who's averaged almost 9 yards a carry. Atlanta ran for 210 tonight, 6.6 a carry. That doesn't bode well for the 49ers because they couldn't stop the run at all this week. So now here comes Bijan and a really good running attack. Drake London caught 10 balls. They targeted him 16 times tonight. So put Demo on Drake London. He had 10 for 158 and a touchdown. So Atlanta suddenly has all these rushers now. I mean, it's funny. A couple years ago, they couldn't rush the passer. Now they can really rush the passer. They got all kinds of guys. And they put some heat on Josh Allen. And if you can heat up the quarterback and cause turnovers, Atlanta had 4 sacks and 6 hits on the quarterback. And Josh Allen threw him 2 interceptions. And Atlanta was +2 on the turnover margin, and they win the game. The other thing, I don't know where you guys are on the Bills. I know lots of people think the Bills are a great Super Bowl contender. I think, once again, Josh Allen, until proven otherwise, I think he's going to be undone by his weapons and his defense. Look at these weapons. James Cook, Ty Johnson. I mean, I don't hate James Cook, but I don't think he's very good. Their receivers are Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Dawson Knox, Keon Coleman, and Elijah Moore. There's no stars there. There's no stars there. I mean, look at Atlanta by comparison. They had Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts were their top 3 receivers. Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman. That doesn't sound like Super Bowl weapons to me. So Buffalo loses 24-14. And I don't want to say same old, but I'm not a believer in the Buffalo Bills. I'm just not. I love Josh Allen. I wish the Niners had drafted him. He's an amazing talent. He grew up a Niner fan. But those weapons are kind of That defense is just kind of So I'm not a big Buffalo Bills fan or believer in their Super Bowl hopes. So that was the first game. The second game was Bears Commanders in Maryland. And once again, turnovers are the name of the game. Jaden Daniels is better than Caleb Williams, and he showed it tonight. Daniels was 19 of 26 for 211 and 3 touchdowns. But he threw a pick. He was sacked 3 times. And they wound up losing the game because they couldn't take care of the football. Caleb, on the other hand, 17 of 29 for 252 yards and a touchdown. He also was sacked 3 times. But the Bears had a hell of a running game tonight. 5-4 carry. DeAndre Swift had a great game. He had 108 yards on the ground. He had 67 yards as a receiver. He got in the end zone. The Bears ran it better. And they did just enough offensively. But the key in this game was turnovers. Washington, at the end of the day, was -3 in turnovers. 2 fumbles, 1 interception, and there you go. That's it. It was a wet night. The last turnover was a fumble. Bad exchange from Jaden Daniels to Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Call me Bill. And they gave the ball back to the Bears. The Bears drove down the field, and Jake Moody with the game winner. Somebody put out on their Twitter, some of you guys are going to be apologizing to Jake Moody. Well, so much for that crap. Nobody's apologizing to Jake Moody, but he's now in Chicago, and he's backing up there, and they had an injury to their kicker, so they bring Jake Moody up off the practice squad. He had one blocked tonight, but he hit the game winner. I was hoping so hard for him. Because he's a good dude. He's a nice guy. I interviewed him 4 or 5 times when he was a 49er. Just remember this. I mean, there's a lot of Niner fans that get real aggressive with Jake Moody. Just remember this. He wasn't trying to miss all those kicks with the Niners, right? He was trying to make them, and he just didn't. So, but I felt so happy for him tonight. And I'm happy for the Niners as well, because I think the Niners probably wanted the Commanders to lose. I think the Commanders, I mean, it's early in the year, and, Washington's 3-3, Chicago's 3-2. Heck, by the end of the year, who knows? The Niners could be going head-to-head against Chicago for a playoff berth, and you look back at this and go, I wish Washington had beat them. Or they could be going against Washington for that same playoff berth and are happy that Chicago got the win tonight. But turnovers, the 2 winners were +2 and +3 in turnovers. That's what it's going to take. So that's my quick thought on the Monday Nighter. By the way, the baseball tonight, an amazing well, it wasn't a doubleheader. Mariners beat the Blue Jays game 1 of the ALCS, game 2, I should say. Seattle leads the series 2-3. They won today 10-3. Break up the Mariners. Man, I love watching the Mariners right now. But then the Dodgers won tonight 2-1 over the Brewers. And I don't know if you guys saw it, the most unlikely double play ever in that game tonight. A ball with the bases loaded that the center fielder caught, and then it popped out of his glove. It ricocheted off the wall, and then he caught it off the rebound, and the base runners didn't know if they should tag or not, and they got a double play out of it. But the Dodgers ultimately win the game. That was game 1 of the LCS, goes to the Dodgers 2-1. Brewers only had 2 hits tonight in that game, but that was a wild one. All right, let's talk a little bit about the 49ers, because I did rewatch the game, and I definitely would love to hear from you if you want to chime in. 808 KNBR. Let's take a couple calls, and then I did catch a couple things on the rewatch, but I'll just give you my basic before we hit the calls here. I'll just give you my basic thoughts on the Niners. One, they can't run the ball, and it looks like the Niners have a ton of problems. Like, if you look at the Niners right now, you'd be like, they can't do this and they can't do that, and they've got this issue and that issue. And then if you look closer, you're like, wait a second. All their problems offensively are tied to one thing: they can't run the ball. They cannot run the football. So because you can't run the football, when you get down in close areas like the red zone, you can't run the football, and you're not good in the red zone because you can't run it. They're not good in the red zone because they can't run it. When you can't run the football, you pass way more than you should. They're passing 40 times a game, and they have no offensive balance because they can't run the ball. Mac Jones has been hit 20 times in the last 2 weeks. Why? Because they can't run the ball. So they don't have any offensive balance. So he's dropping back to pass 40 times. So he's taking too many hits. And it's all of their issues on offense, I think, all stem back to they can't run the ball. They cannot run the ball. Now, will they be able to run it Sunday night against the Falcons if they get George Kittle back in the lineup? Possibly. But that's the issue. They cannot run the football. So all this talk about Trey Hendrickson and Kayvon Thibodeau and all those guys aren't going to help you run the ball. I really think the 49ers ought to trade for a veteran offensive lineman. I was looking at Adam Schefter's list of guys who could be available. He had Joel Bitonio, who played at Nevada, plays with the Browns. He also had, who else did he have on his list? Kevin Zeitler, who's in Tennessee right now. Really good power guard, great run blocker, tough as hell, nasty, really nasty, kind of an old school throwback guy. He would be a culture changer on that Niner offensive line. Go get an offensive lineman that's worth something inside. Colby's getting his you-know-what handed to him. They cannot run the football, and it's derailing them in every way imaginable. Their quarterbacks are now hurt. They have no offensive balance. You've got receivers that are pissed off. I mean, they're not getting the ball. You need to run the ball in the red zone. You can't. I mean, their inability to run the football is blowing up their equation. And I would go after a Kevin Zeitler. I don't think it would take a lot to get Kevin Zeitler out of Tennessee. You have to pay him some money. He's got a pretty good sized contract. But, I mean, go get a real guard. You're leaning on Connor Colby. The Niners were leaning on Jake Moody, and everything seemed futile until they got rid of Jake Moody and went after, Eddie Pinheiro, and now suddenly things don't look so gloomy. Suddenly it looks like they got the best kicker in Niner history. Suddenly they look like a much better team on special teams because of the presence of a kicker who's doing well. So one move can change your equation. They can't run it. So let's go through the options. Christian McCaffrey sucks, or their line's not good. Which one is it? I'll give you a vine here at 808 KNBR. Is the Niners' problem running the ball because Christian's not good? Or is the Niners' problem running the ball is that their offensive line stinks? I'd love to know. 808 KNBR. All right, let's go to the phone lines. But that's what I see. I see a team that, they can't stop the run, and they can't run the ball. And they couldn't stop the run before Fred went out. They were giving Rachaad White 10 yards a pop before Fred went out. They cannot stop the run. They cannot run the ball. And to me, don't bother trading for Trey Hendrickson because he's not a run blocker. And you're not going to be able to run the ball better because you have Trey Hendrickson. Go get a better offensive lineman. Bench Connor Colby. If you have to change out Jake Brendel for a better center, do it. And see if you can run the football. If you can run the football, guess what? Mac Jones is good enough. If you can run the football, guess what? Brock Purdy's good enough. If you can run the football, you can dominate the time of possession, and this young defense might prove that they're, good enough. So it's all about run the ball, and they can't do it. And until they make this change, it's not going to be any better. You have to be able to run the ball. You have to be able to achieve some form of offensive balance. You cannot say, hey, Mac Jones, drop back to pass 40 times. Good luck to you. Hey, Brock, drop back to pass 40 times behind this line. Good luck to you. It's not going to work. That's not a winning equation. So that's what I see. I see a team, they're really, really, really bad still on special teams. My God, we saw a kickoff go 5 yards into the end zone. The Buccaneers guy stumbles on the goal line because he's not sure if he wants to come out or not. Then he looks down at his feet because he's like, "Oh, I came out. I guess I got to go. I got to take it all the way out. I'm 1 inch into the field of play." He still got to the 28-yard line. I mean, come on. When a kicker kicks a kickoff 5 yards deep into the end zone and the guy hesitates and stops at the goal line and looks at his feet and his toes and is like, uh-oh, he should have gotten past the 12. Instead, he gets out to the 28. I mean, Brant Boyer, make it stop. Please. All right, 808 KNBR. Let's go to the lines right here. Cam's in Morgan Hill, and he's with us on the Sports Leader. What's going on, Cam?
Hey, what's up, Blair? How you doing?
Good, man. What's on your mind tonight?
Good. Yeah, I just want to give an applause to Jake Moody. I mean, that was a great game. He did have one block, but
seriously,
but
a little clap for Jake Moody. Yeah, I mean, come on. He's a good guy, man. He's just a pretty ordinary kicker, But I hope he finds himself because you know what, the NFL is littered with examples of good kickers, including the great Adam Vinatieri, I believe, who got drafted in one spot, blew up, wasn't any good, went to a new spot, found themselves, and went and had a great career. So it's kind of a common path for kickers, believe it or not. So maybe Jake, can follow in that line.
Yeah, most definitely. A couple of things. I think.
Yeah.
I think the O-line is definitely the number one thing to do. I know looking at the Jets, you can also try and get Will McDonald, and then maybe Joe Tippmann. I know Joe's still on his rookie contract, and they might not want to trade a young player, but maybe sending a 3 or a 4 to get those two for one might be good. But yeah, the offensive line needs some help. I know Pooney's dealing with the injury, and Colby's a 7th-round rookie, but. Yeah, Brendel, I think, needs to maybe even try Drew Moss. I mean, he did good in the preseason.
Seriously, I mean,
always try that.
Look at all options, right? Look at all options, especially at center. You got many options here. I know Firster loves Brendel, but you got Hennessy, you got Zakel, you've got Drake Nugent. I mean, you got like 4 different guys that can play center. And I'm not saying I'm not putting this all on Brendel. I'm not. But and then Dom Pooney, I love Dom Pooney. He's like one of my favorite guys on the team. Dom Pooney hit the ground and his helmet much, much harder yesterday than he hit any defensive lineman. I mean, when he was pissing himself, he's pounding the ground. When he's pissing himself, he's pounding his helmet. I want to see that kind of aggression going at defensive linemen. This guy's a shadow of what he was last year. And that's got to change, or they're going to have to find somebody else to go with because they're not getting it done up front. And I love Dom Pooney, but he's until proven otherwise, he's part of the problem, not the solution. Cam, have a great night, man. Appreciate you. Opens up a line, 808 KNBR. Where are you with the Niners? What do you want to see them do between now and the trade deadline? Steve's in Albany on the Sports Leader. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Larry. Pleasure talking to you.
Hey, pleasure having you.
Yeah, I want to talk about the backup running back situation. And I want to get your perspective on an insider on what happened regarding this thing I'm going to bring up and why it happened. So one of my, I mean, he's not going to make the 49ers, Hall of Fame team. but he's one of my favorite players that they've ever had, and that's Jeff Wilson Jr. So
Okay.
I was thrilled when they picked him back up this year, and I thought he had one of the best, preseasons of any 49er. And then for them to let him go, and then they let him go. Who knows why? And then they signed Robinson, for what, $7 million or something like that.
They traded for him. Yeah.
Had some productive years, but they get him, and one, he's not productive, and two, he's not getting much of an opportunity. So, I mean, I know Jeff Wilson's now kind of stuck on the practice squad in Miami, but I guess why didn't they stick with Wilson, and why does that happen? Why do some guys get the benefit of the doubt and other guys don't? Wilson's come through time after time during his stays with the 49ers, and it seems like he doesn't get any respect. I don't really get it. So I wonder what you think about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good question. It's a good question. Okay, first of all, beyond the 49ers, right? Observing football for years and years and years. When guys lose their legs, they go to the ground a lot. What I saw from Jeff Wilson when he came back to the practice with the Niners is that he was on the ground all the time. He went to the ground all the time. And to me, that's a dead giveaway that your legs are shot. And I think they saw that as well. I don't have confirmation of that. I mean, I don't have Lynch or Shanahan on record saying, "Yep, Krug, we saw what you saw." But I saw a guy that was on the ground a lot. And that generally means that you're either not in shape or you've lost it. You've kind of lost your ability to keep your balance, stay on your feet. The game's played on your feet. You got to stay on your feet. If you can't stay on your feet, you can't really do it. And that's what I saw. I saw a guy that just was knocked off his feet a lot. And to me, that tells me his legs are done and he's done. So, and it happens fast. It happens really, 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 really fast in the NFL. You can go from, you have it to all of a sudden you get an injury or two, a year or two, and now you're done. So I kind of think he's done. I know he had some good moments in the preseason, but I got to be honest, I don't think that was reflective of what I saw in practice. At practice, he had a hard time keeping his feet, and he looked like he was through. As far as Brian Robinson, he's a much younger player. He was a starting running back with the Commanders. As far as, what he's done thus far, yeah, you're right. He hasn't gotten it rolling yet, but I think he probably will. He's a younger player. He can run through arm tackles. He's very strong. I don't know that he's an upgrade on Jordan Mason, who they had last year, and a lot of people are like, "Hey,
I
why
forgot to bring him up?" Oh yeah,
yeah, why didn't they just keep Jordan Mason?
Oh my God!
But Jordan Mason, that I think was more about Jordan Mason's lack of maturity. Jordan Mason spoke out of turn last year, where he said, he just said the wrong thing. He's a young guy. He does not that experience in front of the cameras, and somebody said, "Hey, when did you know you were going to start?" And he made a mistake and said, "Somebody told me earlier this week."
Oh, yeah.
But, that went against the NFL rules because the Niners hadn't divulged that information publicly. And so I'm sure when he said that, somebody either on the PR side or on the coaching side or on the front office side probably got in Mason's face and said, "Bro, what? No, you blew it. You blew it." And then he just emotionally shut down the rest of the year. Like the rest of the year at the podium, when he was up there, he looked like a 12-year-old kid who didn't want to talk and was being made to talk. And I just think that they felt, and I don't know, I think his price was going up. He also has a propensity to fumble. Shanahan hates fumblers. And I think he wanted to change the scenery. His money was going up. His attitude was not the most professional. I don't think they really liked the way he handled that whole situation. And I just think that they looked at it and said, "Hey, look, we can find a replacement. We can get a couple draft picks." They turned him trade him to Minnesota for 2 picks. They turned those 2 picks, one into Robinson and the other into Marquise Siegel. So you got a good safety and a replacement back. I think the Niners are pretty pleased with how that went, but I think Mason's probably better than Robinson at the end of the day.
Yeah, but thanks for like the insight on
Yeah.
On that. I had no idea that was what was going on kind of behind the scenes. So I appreciate it. And
I mean, there's a bunch. Oh, go ahead.
And also what you said about Wilson at practice, because none of us ever get to see practice. So all we see is the games, right? So yeah.
And Wilson's not on anybody's active roster now, and I don't think he probably will be unless it's late in the year for a game here or there. And then I think the Niners would have. He's on Miami's practice squad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, the Niners probably would have been cool with Jeff going on their practice squad. But I think he preferred to be in Miami, and maybe that was about the tax situation in Florida versus the tax situation in California. I think that very well could have played a role in his decision. I don't think the Niners didn't want him. I mean, it came across like, well, do you want him? Do you not want him? I think they wanted him. I think he probably wanted to be on the Dolphins practice squad instead of the Niners practice squad.
Got you.
So.
All right. Thanks a lot. Keep up the great work. It's always a pleasure listening to you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great one. Appreciate you. Opens up a line at 808 KNBR. We'll do this. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll take more of your calls. 808 KNBR is the number. What do you want to see the 49ers do from here? Because, I mean, some people are like, hey, you know what? The season's over. Sell all these guys. Really? You really want to do that? You really want to try to trade George Kittle or trade Trent Williams or trade some veteran players? I don't know that I would do that. I feel like, look at the NFC. Yesterday was a bad game, obviously. The 49ers couldn't run. They lost Warner. Tampa, they looked a little outclassed by Tampa. But Tampa might be one of the best teams in the conference. I don't think they're world beaters, but they're one of the better teams. And at 4-2 with the schedule that the Niners are looking at, I think a 10 or 11 win season is, even with the injuries, still very, very viable. So how do you pull the plug on that? I don't think you do. Just because you're not the Super Bowl favorite, just because it's unlikely that you're going to win the Super Bowl, doesn't mean it's impossible, and doesn't mean it can't be done. Get to the playoffs, get Brock healthy, and then you say, well, how do you do all these things? I think it's as simple as go add a veteran offensive lineman that will enable you to run the ball a little bit better. Because right now you're struggling. You can't run it. And if you can't run it, you can't have balance. And if you can't have balance, it's just going to be 40 more dropbacks for Mac Jones or Brock Purdy. And then they're going to have 5 or 6 sacks a game, and they're going to be hit 10 times a game. And the Niners are going to be looking at Adrian Martinez before Halloween. So they have to really deal with the problem at hand. They wanted to kick the offensive line, rebuild into the offseason. And I think that's another reason they don't want to trade that first-round pick, because I think it's earmarked for an offensive tackle to replace Trent Williams. But they're in a situation now where, they have to improve their equation. And Trey Hendricks would be awesome if you could guarantee me that the 49ers were going to have a lead with 5 minutes to play, and all they needed to do was just have a little bit more pass rush up front to close out some of these games. That'd be one thing. But their issues look more involved than that. I think their issues have a lot to do with their inability to run the football. But if you can somehow improve that area and start to run the football better, now you've got balance. Now you've got healthy quarterbacks. Now you've got a rested defense. And now I think you're viable to win against any team in the NFC playoffs. I think the NFC is pretty good. I don't think it's that good. You shaking in your boots about going to LA, Seattle, Philly, Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, Tampa. I mean, I'm not saying that the Niners are going to go to all those places and smoke those teams, But I know this, the 49ers would not be at all intimidated to roll into any of those venues in the playoffs and take their shot. And I think 49er fans know this. As sure as we're sitting here, the Niners have the ability to beat any of these teams in the NFC playoffs, even without Warner, even without Bosa. These other teams aren't perfect either. So I think that's a big part of it. This is a war of attrition, man. It's the last man standing. Tampa lost a lot of good players. The Niners have lost a lot of good players. But there's a lot of football between now and the end of the year, and a lot of things can happen. So what do you want to see the Niners do? Where should the Niners go from here with the November 4th trade deadline at this point, just weeks away? Trade for a vet? If so, what position? Trade for a youth, some youth. Some people have suggested that. Trade away a key veteran and add more draft capital and really think about 26. Do nothing, stand pat, just kind of hope everything works out with the hand that you have. 808 KNBR, what do you want to see them do? We'll take some of your calls straight ahead. Mayoko stopped by with Dirty Work as well. We'll let you hear some of that conversation before we get out of here. Niners Nightly post Monday Night Football on the Sports Leader.
Cheeks.
I don't really try to get us to focus on anything from what the past. It's about what's happening going forward. And the reality is we lost another really good player. But what are we going to do about it? And there's lots of stuff I can show our guys and stuff from the tape that's very encouraging. Of some real good things Tatum did when he went in and replaced him. I think we got a lot of young guys doing some real good things on defense. But what type of team are we going to become going forward? And I think we have players here we can win with. But it makes it harder to make mistakes and things like that. And I thought that was something we did too much of yesterday. And those are the things I'm really focused on now about if we want to make something out of our record going forward of what we've already accomplished with that 4-2. Guys got to keep getting better. We got to put pressure on some veterans to play the best that they can. And these rookies who I believe are coming along need to put the pressure on themselves to clean up the mistakes.
Now, back to Niners Nightly with your host, Larry Krueger, on KNBR, the sports leader.
Kyle Shanahan right there coming back. That was Kyle's presser today at 3:30 or so, roughly. He talked to all of us about the game and, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're 4-2. What are you going to do? And that's the question I'm throwing out to you guys tonight at 808 KNBR. What do you want to see the Niners do? Do you want them to be – he was asked, are you less likely now to be an aggressive team at the trade deadline since Warner went out? And Kyle kind of pushed back on the question. He said, he's like, well, I don't know that we were going to be overly aggressive to begin with, but I don't think this changes anything. If we can find somebody that can help us this year, doesn't cost us too much next year, we're interested. Whether Warner's there or not, whether Bosa's there or not, whether these guys are hurt or healthy, that's his approach, or that's the Niners' approach to the trade deadline. So we shall see. I think that's the right way to handle it. What are you going to say? Everybody hears everything. You got to remember what the rest of the league is going to think about these things. So what, you're talking to your fans, you're talking to your media, and what happens if you said, yeah, this trade means we're going to be way more aggressive. We really need help, and we're going to be really aggressive, and I'm going to tell John to make twice as many calls. What are you trying to guarantee that you're going to pay through the nose? Are you trying to guarantee that you're going to get a bad deal? Are you trying to guarantee that everybody's going to up the price to you anytime you call because you're on the record of telling your fans that you're going to do something? And so there's expectations. These coaches and GMs in this league are sharks, and there's blood in the water, and that's it. That's the deal. So Shanahan handled that right. It's like, I don't know that we were going to be aggressive to begin with. That's the way you do it. You underpromise and overdeliver. You don't Farhan Zaidi it. Oh, we're going to get this guy. We're going to get that guy. There is no player too big for us. And then the deadline passes. You get AJ Pollock. The fans are like, you're a terrible GM. And a couple years later, you're fired. Manage expectations. What is Kyle Shanahan? He's a coach. What's John Lynch? He's a general manager. But what are they also? They're salespeople for their agenda. Every time they're having a press conference, every time they're sitting in front of a microphone, every time they answer Larry Krueger's questions, they're talking to you. And they're selling their agenda and their game plan and their team to you, the fan. So they're smart. And Shanahan knows if we say, hey, I don't think we're going to be that aggressive, then, under-promise, over-deliver. You under-promise, you over-deliver, you're a superstar, rock star salesperson. Anybody in our audience tonight who does sales knows the number one tenet of a good salesperson. Under-promise, over-deliver. You under-promise, you over-deliver, you're a rock star, you're a hero. You do the opposite, you're a fool, and you're probably fired. Manage your clients' expectations. Who are the Niners' clients? You, me, their players, everybody, the fans, anybody who's within earshot of what they have to say about their team. That's who they're selling to. So I think they're doing it the right way. Don't talk a big game. Don't talk like Farhan and then deliver AJ Pollock. Say nothing. Say, hey, we're going to make calls. We're going to see. And then guess what? You make a deal for Granderson and Gottschalk from the Saints. You're a hero. If you have everybody thinking you're going to get superstars and that you trade for those guys, and then what? You're they're disappointed. You don't want that. You have to get the fans' expectations in the right spot. All right, let's go to the lines. Tom's in Lafayette and wants to talk about a trade of a former Cal Bear coming to the Niners. What's up, Tom?
Well, as a as a wife of a Cal Bear, as a son of a Cal Bear, and a son-in-law of a Cal Bear, I think getting Cameron Jordan would not cost us too much. It probably won't cost us a draft pick. We could probably trade Garindo or more, or both of them, to get help. They put a little pressure on. Even if we don't get sacks, we at least put pressure on the quarterback. It's going to help our defense because Fred's not there to help us. And everybody's got to buckle up on this. And you look at the last night's game with the Chiefs. In the second half, they put a little pressure on Goff, and Goff cannot handle pressure. If you make him move right or left, he is a way less effective quarterback than he reminds me of Duke Bledsoe. So I think this is all we need to do. And I'm waiting for Kittle to come back to help the offensive line so McCaffrey can have some explosives. He had a 2023 explosive year because George Kittle was blocking for him, because there isn't a tight end that could block like that guy, and we need him back in the lineup badly.
No doubt, no doubt. Kittle's a great receiver, but he's an amazing run blocker, and he's like an offensive tackle playing tight end. And without him, man, they miss him. They miss him bad. And they tried to add Luke Farrell, but man, Farrell's, in my opinion, has been disappointing. He had that corner blow right by him yesterday for the strip sack. He recovered the fumble. That was good. Good hustle by Farrell, but he's not this absolute stonewall you blocker that he was billed to be. And we know he's nothing as a receiver. So not too impressed, to be honest, with Farrell. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if they can get Kittle back, if they can start running the ball, anything that will help them start to run the ball will, I think, solve many of their issues. Not all, because that's not going to bring back Fred. It's not going to put pass rush. It's not going to make the coverage tighter. But a lot of their problems on offense are directly related to their inability to run the football. And if they could somehow get that going a little bit, I think you'd see their entire equation offensively start to be a success. I think if they do that, I think their quarterbacks are going to play better. And maybe it's also tied to the fact that a lot of their receivers are out, and so there's not a lot of respect for their receivers. I'll say this: if I'm the 49ers offensive line, if I were Chris Foerster, I would go into that room and tell those guys, hey, look, Bowles didn't even really blitz because he felt like he could just get it done up front with his front four, and he didn't have to blitz. He didn't want to give Mac Jones predefined reads, and because he felt like he could process. So he just sat back there and said, you know what? Mac can process, so we're not going to blitz him. And we're going to see if our front four, without Kalijah Kancey, can beat the Niners' 5 offensive linemen, and they did. 10 hits on Mac Jones.
That second interception he threw, John just was wide open right at the sticks. I wish he had thrown it over there.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Well, you know what happens is, you get sped up. You get sped up, and there's, it's late in the game, and all of a sudden you're not seeing the field quite as well as you did prior because you've been kind of sped up. So I think that's what was going on there. Tom, have a great night in Lafayette, man. We appreciate you. Let's take another one here. Robert's in Idaho. The blowtorch, which is KNBR's signal. You can hear KNBR in San Diego. You can hear KNBR in L.A., Scottsdale, Utah, probably even in Idaho, where Robert is. Robert, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. I'm actually listening to it online. But
okay, well, there you
I
go.
have a quote
Better
I want
yet.
to share with you before we're done. But I'm a retired teacher this year, and I've had a lot of time to listen to you, and I've enjoyed it immensely. So
Thank you.
I'm in agreement with you. No surprise. Get that guard that I'd never heard of before, Swigert or something like that.
Zeitler.
Next year, you could let Trent go. No disrespect meant to him. Re-sign this guy. Draft that rookie, and you have a better offensive line next year also. I hope they still do a defensive end. 1 second, a half of a second makes a huge difference as to the amount of time that you have to defend. And the quote, I'm very proud of the journalists and the fans not to try to set up a quarterback controversy. But a quote just from almost yesterday was George Myra and John Brody. People were calling for George Myra, the backup quarterback.
Okay, it's before my time.
Excuse me?
I said, this one now, my kids say I'm old, but this one's even before my time. But go ahead, continue.
Well, I think it's still appropriate. So anyway,
I don't doubt it.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but thank you, Mr. Kruger. Anyway, the essence is Myra gets the start. And I'm not sure who the writer was in the Chronicle. I don't know if it was before Ira Miller's time, but somebody with a good wit said, Myra doesn't look much better on his back than just Brody. And it's kind of where we're at here. And so I would not have thought of the guard, but that wouldn't cost a lot. Having an attitude in that line would be nice to see. Maybe it inspires Trent Williams a little bit, who I've actually been disappointed in, not because of age. I'm no one to criticize somebody on age, but just the fact it seems like he's just kind of at times going through the motion, unless he's picking up a penalty late on by throwing a defensive back around or something there. So having somebody with an attitude next to him, maybe it pushes him where he has a little bit more left in his stride also. So much enjoyment, sir. Thank you very much for the great reporting.
Appreciate it, Robert. Have a great night in Idaho, and I appreciate the kind words. Like in basketball, when you change out a player, you make a trade, all of a sudden teams are like a totally different team. The Warriors got Jimmy Butler. They were like a totally different team. Why? Because there's only 5 guys on the floor. And if you take out one, you're talking about 20% of your 20% turnover on your starting lineup. So one player can mean a ton in basketball. And that's also why, one player can mean a ton on the line of scrimmage. You got 4 defensive linemen. You add one really good defensive lineman, suddenly you got a much better defensive line. You have 5 offensive linemen. You add a really good offensive lineman and replace somebody who's struggling, and your line is going to get better, dramatically. So, that's my thought, is like, go find a veteran guard that can really set the tone. I love Connor Colby, and they love Connor Colby. And when Shanahan was asked today about Connor Colby, you know what he said? He's like, he's getting great experience. And he's getting great experience. But that's also a way of saying he's not playing very well. And I think they need to upgrade there. And I know everybody's talking about the pass rusher, and that'd be great too. But, man, if you're not going to improve this offensive line, what are you doing? It makes no sense. I mean, I've got Brock Purdy. I'm going to pay him $262 million, but then I'm not going to have a good offensive line? I mean, what is that? That's beyond foolish. If I told you I have a priceless heirloom in my home and it's worth 10 times the value of my home, and then I said, you're like, wow, that's incredible. Do you have a good security system? No, we don't do security. In fact, we leave the doors unlocked. You'd be like, you're a damn fool. You've got a priceless heirloom in your house and you don't even have a security system. That's like the 49ers right now. They've got a $265 million quarterback, and they're going with a 7th round rookie offensive guard, and that guy's giving up pressures left and right. And Mac Jones has been hit 20 times.
Hello,
I'm
a damn
games.
Fool.
Go ahead, Robert.
Just super fast, but again, to show your intelligence, your perception, which is beyond most. You said getting a basketball player, 1 out of 5 makes a difference. Your defensive line is 4. Your offensive line is 5. It makes that same difference in football.
No doubt.
Okay.
Hey, have a great night, Robert. Appreciate you chiming in Idaho, and it opens up a line at 808 KNBR. All right, let's do this. Let's take a timeout. Mayoka was by with Copes and Depop earlier. Really good stuff, and I want you to hear some of that for some of you guys who missed it. We're back with you tomorrow night for Niners Nightly at 6 o'clock. We're with you on Tuesday night at 6, Wednesday night at 6. Thursday night we'll be with you after Thursday night football. So that right around the same time as tonight, right around 8:30 or so. And then Friday we have a shortened show. Friday we're only going from 6 to 6:30. Why? Because we're going to move aside for Justin Allegri and the Cal Bears. We'll carry the Cal North Carolina game. Belichick in town with his girl. Uh, we'll carry that for you on Friday. That's Friday at 6:30. We'll have Cal in North Carolina live from Memorial Stadium. So we're fired up about that, but that means that we only have a half-hour version of the show on Friday. So, and then, of course, Saturday we'll have 49er forecast from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. For a full hour, we'll break down what I think is going to be a hell of a Sunday night game between the Niners and the Atlanta Falcons. So let's do this. Let's take a time out. We'll come back. We'll let you listen to a little bit of Matt Mayoko stopping by with the boys, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's next. It's Niners Nightly, post Monday Night Football on the Sports Leader.
Niners Nightly with Larry Krueger now continues on your proud home of 49ers football, KNBR, the sports leader.
One of our favorite guys, Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area, joins us every Monday talking 49er football, and a big day to do so after the loss of Fred Warner yesterday to a dislocated and broken ankle. He's going to be out for the remainder of the season is the expectation. Matt joins us on the UMA guest line and streaming wherever you're watching Dirty Work today. Matt, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. Like, I don't know. I mean, ranking injuries doesn't really mean much of anything, but in terms of the devastating injuries and the amount of injuries the Niners have dealt with in the Shanahan era, this to me feels even bigger than when Bosa went down earlier this year, even bigger than when he went down the first time a few years ago with a knee injury. This one just feels like the magnitude of it was more heartbreaking for the 49ers than something else we've experienced.
I agree with you, and it's kind of difficult to say that because they have had some difficult ones. That one was a gut punch, and it just did hit differently, and I'm not sure why, other than the fact that it's Fred Warner. You know, it's a really good player. In fact, I'm not sure there's anybody in the NFL who does his job better than Fred Warner does his job. So I think, that had something to do with it. I think just the kind of guy he is, the leader that he's seemed to be, the team spokesman, just everything about him is just top notch. And so maybe that's what it was, but you're right. And I think we all felt it. And when they showed the video of him going off the field on a cart with his foot in an air cast, it just, I don't know, it just felt differently. And it felt like even more so than the Bosa injury, where you kind of, when you knew that Bosa was out, that Monday after it was revealed that he had a torn ACL, you kind of felt like, boy, it's going to be really difficult for the 49ers to get where they want to get without Bosa. But yesterday, it just kind of felt like it was just a very much a turning point for the 49ers, and that it became beyond difficult for them to get where they want. It became impossible. And now it's about, you just kind of think the whole perspective of the season shifted with that Warner injury. Doesn't mean the season's over. Doesn't mean that, they're punting on the year. Doesn't mean that they're going to just cash it in. There's still a lot to play for, but I just don't think it's realistic to think that, they can be going for that ultimate prize now without those two players back at any point this season.
Yeah, and now we wonder what's next. Is Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch going to make a move at the trade deadline? And we got to see where they're at in a couple of weeks when they have the trade deadline. But I was watching you last night on the NBC postgame show, Matt, with Dave Feldman, and you were talking about, does it make sense for them to go for a trade at the deadline? Considering in previous years, in 2019, you knew they were a good team. In 2023, you knew they were a good team. This is a different deal where they were 4-1 and they look good, but there's so many injuries. And given the offseason, with them saying goodbye to a lot of guys, do you think it makes sense for them to make a deal at the trade deadline? We obviously have to see what happens, but given what they did with saying goodbye to Dre Greenlaw, Antonio Hufanga, kind of a competitive rebuild, do you anticipate they would do anything?
I'll put it this way. If it means doing something that takes away from the future to help only this season, no, that doesn't make sense to me at all. However, if they're somehow able to acquire a player who is on a multi-year contract where you're getting that player for the rest of this season and also for 2026, then to me that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to get a Trey Hendrickson, give up whatever you would need to get him, and you only have him for half a season. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever. But if they can find a way to add a player that can not only help this year, but for next year, yeah, okay, now let's have that conversation, because let's face it, the team's not going to be as good for the rest of this year than what they could be next season with Bosa back. And again, that was a clean ACL, so I think the expectation is that he will be able to make a contribution maybe at the start of next season, but early into next year. That will last throughout the season. I think the expectation is that Fred Warner will be back during some point in the offseason program, but be ready in training camp and be back to Fred Warner when the 2026 year rolls around. And then you stack on top of that the young guys from the past two draft classes who will continue to play and play a lot and get better and theoretically be really good or much better heading into next year. So, they're going to be better, you would think, in 2026 than they can be for the remainder of this season. So I think that if there's any draft or any trade scenario that comes up, it has to be done with the idea that it helps the team in 2026, and anything in 2025 is just kind of a bonus.
Talking to Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider, NBC Sports Bay Area. In terms of the Juwan Jennings situation yesterday, I mean, it could be completely layered, and I mean, there's could be a lot of reasons as to why he and Kyle had a little visual spat on the sideline. I did think it was a little odd after the game, though, when he revealed the nature of all of his injuries, and he talked specifically about the 5 broken ribs. Do you associate those two things with each other, revealing that and what happened yesterday on the field? And how unusual is that for a player to put that out there?
Yeah, I think there is a level of frustration, certainly on Juwan Jennings' part, that, he wanted the new contract. He didn't get the new contract. What the 49ers did, the only concession they made was, let's write some stuff into your existing contract where you get paid more if you play.
Right.
And so I think there was a level of frustration that, he had 3 targets, only caught 1 pass for 7 yards, and you wouldn't necessarily expect a player to reveal to the world that he has 5 broken ribs, because all that does is, the Atlanta Falcons will now know that.
Yep.
And, there might be a target on those ribs for this next game. But I think it was important for Juwan to let the world know what he's going through and what sacrifices he's making physically to get out there. And so I'm sure that everybody is feeling a level of frustration, maybe a heightened level of frustration. Maybe the Warner injury had something to do with that as well. I mean, I think there are a lot of factors that go into it, but the way Kyle Shanahan explained it today was that it's just, it gets emotional, it gets heated. And he said that because he has such a good relationship with Juwan that's been built over many years, that they can go after each other a little bit like that and speak their mind, and then whenever it's over, it's over. So that was the spin he put on it. I've been around long enough to know that, your football is an emotional game, and there are heated exchanges that happen between people who have good relationships. But I just think that now there is this level of frustration that had reached a boiling point. And, for Jennings, the off season didn't go the way he wanted. The early part of this season hasn't gone the way he's wanted. And now with free agency looming out there in mid-March, he hasn't had the opportunity really to put up the kind of numbers that would allow him or enable him to get the kind of contract in free agency from whichever team that he thought he should have gotten from the 49ers before this season started. So, I mean, I think all those factors kind of combine and creates, probably that kind of scenario, that kind of, friction that we saw on the sideline yesterday.
Well, Juwan Jennings' loss is Kendrick Bourne's gain with 15 catches the last 2 weeks. What have you made of his productivity in this offense so far?
It's been nothing short of remarkable. I mean, think about this: 8 seasons in this league, his high water mark was 100 yards receiving in a game. And he comes to the 49ers. He gets released before the start of the season, comes back to the 49ers, and had a really bad game against Jacksonville. And I mean, who would have thunk that he would have 142 yards against the Rams to help them get that victory, and then another 142-yard game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, that he's played well. It hasn't been perfect. There have been some issues, and I think in that first pass attempt, he ran the wrong route that led to the interception by Mac Jones. But it's a matter now of just having him playing at that level, where he doesn't have to be the number one guy like he's been the last 2 weeks, but get Pearsall back, get Juwan Jennings healthy, and now Kendrick Bourne can be the number 3 guy. And as Shanahan pointed out, he still seems to have faith and confidence that at some point around the 10-week mark, Brandon Ayuk will get out there. And there's no time frame on his return, but if he can come back, that helps. It just at this point, you just wonder what this team is capable of doing. I would say that the offense looks to be in better shape moving forward than the defense, but still so many question marks about, Kittle should be back out there week 7 here coming up against the Falcons. The combination of the offensive line blocking, the wide receivers blocking, Kittle being out there. Can they get the run game going? And then, what's up with Purdy? Where's he going to be physically to get back out there? Probably not Sunday against the Falcons, but maybe at some point down the road. So at some point, if this thing works out the way the 49ers want it to work out, the offense will get right, and they'll have to put up 30 and 35 points a game in order to win some games and kind of cover for the defense. And at this point, they haven't been able to do that. But just for the future, it looks like the offense might have to carry the load, because I think it's going to be really difficult for that defense going forward with not a great pass rush and losing their best man in the middle.
Matt Bayoka, the voice you hear, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. Matt, always appreciate the time, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, guys.
All right, that's going to do it for Niners Nightly. Thanks to Raph. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Mayoko. Thanks to everybody who listened. We're back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We've got Infinity Sports Radio to entertain you throughout the night. We'll see you tomorrow at 6 on